Grizzlies, franchise history Southwest Division champions. They've locked up the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. And DaMichael Cole, without a doubt, this team is the best team in franchise history. My name's Shawn Coleman. He's DaMichael Cole. Before we get started, though, it's been a little bit of time. We're going to play the fancy intro music to the Southwest Division champion, Memphis Grizzlies.
Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This man right here is not anywhere near next to me. This man right here is DaMichael Cole. My name is Shawn Coleman. As always, it's a pleasure to be with you here on the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. DaMichael Cole. Southwest Division champions, number 2 seed in the Western Conference. How does it feel, sir?
Shawn, it's amazing. I mean, you look at the Southwest Division, and that's the division. That's the division with the teams. When you look at from 2000 to now, they have dominated in the NBA. This is monumental, Shawn. We can't say everyone tries to downplay divisions in the NBA now, and they're not as big of a deal. But for the Grizzlies, Shawn, this is huge. The Spurs, the Mavs, those are historically really good franchises, especially in this 21st century. They have pretty much just been fixtures in the playoffs. For the Grizzlies to get over that hurdle, and the best part of it was, Shawn, they actually beat the team who has owned the Southwest Division for most of these years.
Yeah, DaMichael Cole, who was born in 1978, he remembers all those years myself, just born in 1996. It's hard for me to remember, but we're not going to get birth certificates out to check. But all joking aside, obviously can't thank you enough for coming into Locked On Grizzlies. The first time we could say we're doing a Locked On Grizzlies podcast covering the team that has won the division, is number 2 in the Western Conference. You can find myself at StatsSCC. You can find DaMichael Cole at DaMichael C on Twitter. The show at Locked On Grizz. You can find the podcast wherever it's available: Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, right here on YouTube as well. Hit that subscribe button below. And listen, there are people who claim we know what we're talking about. I'm right over at Grizzly Bear Blues. Obviously, have been here for a few years, being your host on Locked On Grizzlies, and I cannot tell you how excited I am that I could share this with my co-host, Mr. DaMichael Cole from the Commercial Appeal. I don't even know which side I'm pointing to, but DaMichael, let's get right into it. So the Grizzlies, though they did get the win, their 6th win in a row, was a bit of a struggle last night. They'd been beating teams pretty well, getting off to hot starts, really doing well, in the first half. But tonight they did the same thing, but in the second half, the defense let up a little bit, and this was much closer than it seemed like it would be for the first 36 minutes of the game.
Shawn, they saw a look that they haven't seen. Greg Popovich, he always has something up his sleeve. He's been doing this so long, but still, that's why he's one of the greatest. Still to this day, he can reach in that bag of tricks and throw you for a loop. And we talked about, Taylor Jenkins, his mind, his ability to adapt, adjust to whatever comes at him. Greg Popovich threw him one of those curveballs, and we're baseball guys. He threw one of those ones that buckled the knees at Taylor Jenkins today, and it took some time. The main thing that he did, we've talked time and time again about Desmond Bane and what he's done in this last stretch. Just since John Moran has been out, he's been the guy. He's been the guy on offense, as a scorer. He's actually, been a very good secondary facilitator to what Tyus Jones is doing, and he's been the backup point guard. He's kind of assumed multiple roles in one, and he's thrived. Well, you know what Greg Popovich said? Throw him out of the window. We're going to box in one Desmond Bane. Let's make someone else beat us. That threw the Grizzlies for a loop. It threw the Grizzlies in a hurdle. It was basically a 4-on-4 game, and the Spurs went on an 18-2 run, Shawn. So the Grizzlies kind of, as Tyus Jones put it, they got knocked back on their heels a little bit. But Shawn, they needed this. We've seen this is the 6th consecutive win. In the last 5, they all weren't blowouts, but they all were double digits. The Nets game wasn't a blowout. There was some adversity there. But at the end of the game, at the end of the 4th quarter of all those games, the bench was in. This was the first time we were like, you know what? Who's going to take that shot? it happened to be Desmond Bain, and 5 seconds left, the ball rolled out for him. They needed one more defensive stop, but all in all, Shawn, I think this game taught us as much as any game in March without John Morant.
Absolutely. And that's what stood out about this game, right? It was players assuming roles that they typically do not assume. Desmond Bain getting the big stop at the end. Dylan Brooks, though he did great on offense, more of a facilitator in this game. But the guy that stood out was Tyus Jones. I adore Tyus Jones. I absolutely adore Tyus Jones, especially playing right now. He's on one of the best stretches we've seen when it comes to his superpower, assist to turnover ratio. But then tonight, in a game where he had to be helped on the sideline, I believe, to get a dislocated finger back in place. It may not have been that extreme, but my point is, you're right. They took away Desmond Bain with Ja being out. Ja, Desmond Bain, Jaren Jackson Jr., none of them were the biggest offensive contributors in this game. It was Tyus Jones with 25 points, and that's what Taylor Jenkins talked about. The unselfishness, but also the confidence in knowing that any given night, someone could step up into the star role, and Tyus Jones did it tonight. Once again, proving so many players on this roster can help win significantly in multiple ways.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention, the hand injury that he suffered at the end of the second quarter there, Shawn. It looked a little concerning. When you see a player get his hand wrapped up around that towel, and there are certain injuries in sports where they're big for each sport. Hand injury is almost the equivalent to a shoulder injury in baseball for NBA players. You need your hand to dribble, to shoot, to pretty much do everything effectively. And Tyus Jones is a point guard. So the first thing I watched when he came back in the second half was, how's he going to be able to dribble? It was his left hand. So when teams force him to the left side, is he going to be able to dribble with no problem? And I saw when he made his first basket in the second half, he was running up the court. He was kind of still, he was messing with his fingers a little bit. He had two of his middle fingers were taped up. And I was like, oh, man, this might bother him for a while. But, Shawn, as the game went on, I don't know if it was adrenaline or what, but the pain seemed to wear off a little bit as he put it after the game, which, led me to believe that he's still, feeling some after effects from it. It felt a lot better with a win than it would have, with the other way around. So we'll see where Tyus Jones and, he goes from here, because now the number 2 seed is wrapped up, Shawn. That's the best part of this. You don't have to worry about, too much risk. And you don't have to, worry about all the risk with playing these guys. You can simply say, oh, his fingers are hurt. Let's sit him out a couple games. We lose those couple games. I mean, the only thing that you're probably losing at this point is a chance at the franchise record and wins. But other than that, they don't have too much to play for, just instead of, just staying in rhythm and things like that.
You're absolutely correct. And listen, at the end of the day, I don't want to in any way, shape, or form water down the fact that the Grizzlies, clinching the number 2 seed, getting the Southwest Division, is a monumental achievement. But DaMichael, I'll be honest with you, even though before the season that seemed like a long shot, obviously the 2 seed for sure, but even getting the Southwest Division, we've just been doing so well for so long, it's become expected over the past 3 months. So you're kind of like, okay, this is just a checkpoint. This is just a check mark. This is checking a box that we expected to check. And that's how this team is playing now. This team is playing to the level that, okay, this is the expectation. Where we're focused on is that deep push in the playoffs, which not many people, even though we've been playing well, expect right now. And I'll say it's great, but you also want to kind of make sure this team, even though they're young, even though they got many years hopefully ahead of them like this, they take advantage of really appreciating what they've done.
Yeah. And, you ask those questions after the game because you want to see if these guys are really living in the moment of what's going on right now. Because this is a young Grizzlies team. This is completely different than had Mike Conley and the Core 4 group won a Southwest Division title after, 5 playoff runs. They would have really soaked this up a lot. This group, a lot of these players, second season, third season, fourth season, it's just basketball. But Tyus Jones, he talked about it a little bit. Just, this is huge. This is big time. As he said, Taylor Jenkins, talked about they want to celebrate these milestones while also, keeping the bigger goals in minds and things like that. So I think, they have a good idea of what they've just accomplished. But I mean, Shawn, we know this team. I mean, even when they won the 11 games in a row and you know, all the other streaks that they've been on, it's always been, okay, we got that out the way. Now we're moving on to what's next. And I think their mind is simply on getting sharp as possible for the postseason.
Yeah, but there's no reason to worry about what the naysayers said in the offseason. I remember, back in August, DaMichael, when you yourself back in Philly said they were going to finish 4th in the division this year, but we won't talk about that too much. Moving on to NBA Top Shot. Before we get into some fun conversation now, to be honest with you, we have a few weeks before we play something meaningful. NBA Top Shot is the officially licensed NFT of the NBA. Connect with a passionate community of NBA fans across the globe and build your collection with your favorite moments from NBA history. That is correct. NBA history. NBA Top Shot is the future of what being an NBA fan looks like. It's part trading cards, part stock market, part fantasy sports with the built-in loyalty program. Now, I hear all the time, why would I buy something that I could watch on YouTube for free? And I tell these people that it's not about watching a highlight. It's about having ownership in the stock market of the NBA's greatest moments. If you sign up today, the best way to start is getting yourself a starter pack. You could pull a moment of a superstar like LeBron or KD, or star rookies like Cade Cunningham or Evan Mobley for $9. Head over to lockedon.nbatopshot.com to start building your collection today. Listen, obviously, the Final Four is coming up this week, but also want to remind you the NFL draft is going on it's going on actually next month, within this month. Plenty of reason to check out the Locked On College podcast of your choice after you check out Locked On Grizzlies. Make Locked On Grizzlies your first listen of the day, then your favorite Locked On College podcast of your choice, your second listen of the day. So, DaMichael Cole, I still don't know why I always say your last name. I'll stop one day. The thing that I'll ask you is this. We had a fun conversation probably 2 to 3 months ago, and you were here, but I don't remember if you ever chimed in on this. So I'll ask you directly, DaMichael, is this the best Grizzlies team in franchise history? It's either yes or no. Don't be towing that line saying we'll see. Is this the best roster in Grizzlies franchise history?
Shawn, this is the one. This is the one. I'll say it. And you say don't toe the line. I didn't plan on towing the line because this team has shown me some things, just consistently. For one, they haven't lost more than 3 games at any point this season in a row. That's consistency, at a peak level. We saw just time and time again for a while. I mean, I think it wasn't until February 24th, right after the All-Star break, was when they had their first consecutive losses in the time that I had been here, pretty much since Christmas. So they went from the end of December throughout January all the way to the end of February without losing back-to-back games. This team is tough. They have some of the defensive measurables of some of the best Grizzlies teams in the past. Not quite as, elite as those defenses, but the offensive peak is much more superior than those teams. And that's the difference. Down the stretch of this game, you don't have John Moran, and they're still able to, pull it out against a team. It's 31-45 team by record, but the Spurs have won 4 games in a row. DeJounte Murray was playing like the all-star that he is, the all-NBA defender that he's been voted for previously. He was in his bag. And, the Grizzlies had to reach down, dig in deep, and pull it out. They also have a superstar. They have John Moran, and you can throw that whole record without him out of the window because we both know down the stretch of this game, when they had to claw to pull this one out, if John Morant was playing, he would have been the guy getting the ball in that final stretch, and it probably would have been a little bit easy going down the stretch. He's been one of the top clutch players in the NBA. So all that record stuff, throw it out the window because at the end of the game, you need John Morant in the game. You need him with the ball. They have that guy on this team. They have John Morant. They have these defensive pieces, and they're so versatile, Shawn. That's the biggest thing. Past Grizzlies teams, I think the younger squads back in the 2003, 2004 days, those teams were really versatile in terms of they could go small with a Lorenzen Wright, Bonzi Wells, Mike Miller, and that group. But your 4 and 5 was Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph, no matter who you played against in those days. Well, today, if you're playing against a big bruising team, they can say, okay, we're going to keep Steven Adams in the game. If you're playing against a team where you want to, do a lot of switching and versatility and things like that, bring in Brandon Clark, no problem. They don't even know what games they're going to finish. A lot of games with what wings who are going to be in the game. The way DeAnthony Melton's shooting the ball, sometimes you just got to have him in the game. But then Dylan Brooks, he's been clutch. He made some clutch baskets in this previous game, against the Spurs. Desmond Bane, he's been the go-to option down the stretch. Tyus Jones was really good. They have so many options, Shawn, and they're well coached. They're just well-rounded. I think this team, they're top 10 in the NBA offensively and defensively. No Grizzlies team, I think, compares to this one.
Yeah, and three things that stand out to me. You kind of hit into all of them, but the offensive resourcefulness, number one. Obviously, you've got the best offensive player and the best shooter in franchise history, and John Moran and Desmond Bane playing together. You never had that before. The different ways they could beat you in the resourcefulness on offense stands out as number one. Number two, the supporting cast. You got your core four here with Dez, Ja, Jaren, and Dylan Brooks. Collectively, they may not be to the level what the peak of the core four was during the grit and grind era, but the 5th through 10th guys supporting them sure does allow for you again to, even if those top 4 guys may not be at their best, you can still win games because those 5 through 10 guys can step up. And I'll go ahead and say this as well. Taylor Jenkins is the best coach in franchise history. No disrespect to Lionel Hollins, no disrespect to Dave Yeager, but I feel in terms of the progression that we've seen Taylor Jenkins show, how much he's extracted value from several of these players to create this depth. I don't think you've ever seen a coach add value like Taylor Jenkins has. So the whole point is, DaMichael, is that the reason why I will say also with confidence this team is the best roster of the Grizzlies I've ever seen, and it took me a while to say that, it's because on so many levels, they have things at levels that they've never had before, and that's what excites me. I feel even if you stack up other teams at their best, the Grizzlies can play with them. Warriors fans can sit here and tell me all about last decade. I promise you, I saw it. Let's talk about the last 3 years when the Grizzlies have kicked the Warriors' ass when it comes to putting a team together and being able to be in a position where they can really compete with the Warriors and make the most of a second-round opportunity. You could never say that about the grit and grind era Grizzlies. So that's the reason why, yes, I do feel like that this Grizzlies team is the best roster ever because on so many levels, they just have things now that they've never had before.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point about Taylor Jenkins, I think, he really just deploys these weapons so well. He is doing a good job in managing the rotations, and it's never a set rotation. I feel like some coaches in the NBA are real stubborn in their sets. First half, second half, these guys are going to come in at this time no matter what. Taylor Jenkins, we've seen him, guys, if they play hot in the first half, they're going to play 10 more minutes in the second half, or a starter. We've seen guys, like some of the starters have had bad first halves. Well, guess what? They're not going to be playing a lot in the second half. A lot of coaches, I don't know if they're afraid to make that move, but they just don't. They ride their guy and they say, you know what? Maybe it's a confidence thing. No, we're going to let him play through it. Now, Taylor Jenkins goes with the flow of the game. I think that's a really good coaching trait to have. And the coaching is elite, but then you talk about the player development. I mean, Shawn, it's been just crazy to watch because for most people, they watch this team from year 1, year 2, year 3 of the Taylor Jenkins era, and they say, how does a team with pretty much the same guys get so much better? The simple answer is they are all young. The youngest players in the NBA are the ones who improve the most from season to season. Guess what? The Grizzlies actually have a roster full of young guys. So what happens with them is they don't have to make these, big moves to go out and acquire these superstar talents. They're going to have a lot of internal growth simply because these guys are so young. And that's how DeAnthony Melton, has the type of season he's been having. Like when he shot at the gates as a starter, then he had the rough patch after COVID. And now he's, looking like one of the best shooters in the league. Desmond Bane, it's just year 2, but that year 1 to year 2 jump, a lot of players talk about it. He's making that now. Year 3 for Brandon Clark, having his most efficient season as a pro. John Moran, he's even taking an incredible jump. And then, again, year 3, jump for him. All of these players internally are taking these jumps all together, and it's all combined for just this massive season. They didn't have, if it's just one or two players on some teams that are taking these jumps, you get minimal growth. The Grizzlies have a bunch of young talent that all have taken these massive jumps. And I mean, we're seeing the results. The result, I mean, is a team that some people expected to be in the play-in, and now they clinched the number 2 seed with, over a week to go.
And that's the thing that stands out is that, listen, we've been through so many of these games. I think, friend of the show, Keith Parrish over at Fast Break Breakfast in Grit and Grinds, he's talked about it on Twitter. The Grizzlies are winning games going away, unlike any team we've seen since the Prime Warriors. And so there's been many of these games that haven't been close. Thankfully, we had a bit of a game to enjoy now, but the Grizzlies now find themselves in a place to where that basically for 3 weeks, they don't have really anything to play for. However, I will certainly correct that statement. There is plenty to play for in terms of ramping up for the playoffs. Me and DaMichael are going to discuss that in just a moment. But DaMichael, before we do, obviously, we've got to talk about betonline.net. Now, I would imagine that if you did some statistical analysis of the teams this year that have been the best teams to bet on, it has absolutely been the Memphis Grizzlies. It also was good to bet on the Atlanta Braves last year when it came to the World Series. It's also good to bet on the Tennessee Vols when it comes to baseball. It's also good to bet on the Tennessee Vols when it comes to baseball. The point being is that when it comes to betonline.net, you can't find a better place when it comes to wagering and betting on sports, whether it's on your mobile device or your laptop. Very easy to use. Listen, you've got pro basketball, you've got the Final Four, boxing, UFC, golf, anything and everything you could think of, Vegas online casino games, everything you could think of is at betonline.net. Make sure to check it out today. Go to betonline.net. On tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast, listen, we're going to have plenty to discuss because it's going to be 1 versus 2 in the West, the Suns and the Grizzlies. And while both teams have basically locked up their positions, you can bet that there's pride and also a bit of an edge going to be on the line. Dylan Brooks talked about it. He's looking forward to that matchup. Plenty to talk about as we preview Suns versus Grizzlies, 1 and 2 in the West on Friday's edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. But DaMichael, so now we get into 5 games left into the season. So we've got the Suns, then we've got, let's see here. We've got the Suns, then we've got the Nuggets, then we got, or the Jazz, then the Nuggets, the Pelicans, and then the Celtics. And so we've got 3 games at home and 2 games on the road. Now, listen, the Grizzlies don't have much to play for, but these teams besides the Suns, they do have plenty to play for. So the Grizzlies are going to get a good test. Dylan Brooks said himself, I asked him directly, now that you've accomplished this, what are you really looking forward to stay consistent as you reach the playoffs? He said the team's defense, because his team is absolutely confident in their offense. DaMichael, what are you looking for? What are you hoping they stay consistent with the most as they go through the final stretch of the season?
The shooting, it is, they're blistering hot right now. I mean, we have not seen this team shoot the ball like that. So I looked it up, and the NBA, this is my Shawn moment here. The NBA league average in 3-point percentage is 35.2%. The Grizzlies have shot above league average from 3-point range in 8 of their last 9 games. How you like my stat, Shawn? How you like that stat?
The stat's good. We'll work on the delivery. I'm kidding. It was awesome to hear. But to your point, the consistency of doing that, we're going to kick ass if we do it.
Yeah, and before that, just to put it in perspective, I believe it was 4 of the previous 9 games before that. They'd have a hot game, cold game, hot game, cold game. It was too inconsistent where you go into a playoff run and you say, you're going to need more than that. You're going to need, you can't be that inconsistent in playoffs. DeAnthony Melton has been consistent from 3-point range lately. Desmond Bane has been consistent pretty much all season, beside a little small rough patch in February. But he's been, one of the most consistent 3-pointers in the entire league. Tyus Jones has been really good. They have the weapons, and everyone is starting to perform. They shoot the ball like this. We're talking about next level. We're talking championship level. That's the biggest thing. They cannot go cold. If they go cold, who knows what will happen in the playoff? Because the paint scoring, it's going to be there. It's been there. But we know things are going to get a little more physical in the playoffs. I wonder how that's going to affect some of the inside, scoring that the Grizzlies have. And like with a guy like Steven Adams, who, just out physicals everyone, guys are going to try a little bit harder. They're not going to, when Steven Adams pushes guys out of the way, they're not just going to, give up. They're going to try to fight their way back into the play a little bit more in the postseason. How will the Grizzlies handle that? But overall, I think it's the shooting. The shooting is the one thing where this team can really take itself to the next level, because the fast break opportunities, the second chance points, they're all going to be there regardless of who this team plays. The shooting, Shawn.
The two things I'm looking for, and I agree, the shooting needs to be there. Again, I harp on this stat, but the reason why I harp on this stat is because it encompasses to me what the Grizzlies need to do. It is an end result that shows the Grizzlies are having their balance. 25 plus threes, 10 plus assists, now 26 straight wins when they do that. Now, DaMichael Cole brings up 35% from three. I don't think that DaMichael Cole has ever shot 35% from three in a 100-game stretch in his playing career. But in general, when it comes to shooting the three, he's absolutely right. If the Grizzlies can find that quality, that's what stands out. But to support that, I talked with Tyus Jones about it again tonight. Asked him about, you said 6 weeks ago, Tyus, passing up the good shot for the great shot. Y'all are consistently doing that now. How important is that for the playoffs? Every possession counts was his answer. It counts even more in the playoffs than it does the regular season. This consistent ability to not only look to pass up the good shot for the great shot, but to create that better shot, to create that great shot consistently, that for me is something I want to keep seeing, especially against playoff caliber teams. But the other big thing to me is defense. At the end of the day, us being able to continue this level of shooting against better competition, I'm not necessarily convinced we're going to be able to consistently do that. I want us to. We have the potential to. But we've got to play top 10 defense, I feel, to truly have that edge against almost anybody in the playoffs. So ball movement and defense is what really stands out to me, DaMichael.
Yeah, and those are two big ones. The ball movement. I'll be interested to see, when John Morant comes back, how, that the way they've been moving the ball lately. And they had a lot of great assist games when John Morant was playing too. But you want to see, that's a player who has the ball in his hands a lot of the game. How will the ball continue to move when he's back? How will, he either incorporate himself into, what they've been doing, or how will they incorporate him into what they've been doing? So there's a lot to look at there with the ball movement. And yeah, defense wins championships. That's a big part of it. And what we've seen a lot lately is the individual defense has kind of picked up. Mainly because you got a guy like Dylan Brooks back now, just watching him guard, Jordan Poole or the Warriors a couple games ago was he was really into Jordan Poole's skin in that game. And just watching him guard, Kevin Porter Jr. in Houston, to the point where Kevin Porter Jr. now, he walked off the court and basically went to the locker room. He came back, but I mean, I think that was a big credit to the way Dylan Brooks was really physical with him. The postseason defense is definitely going to be a big part. I can't wait to see who they match up against. You think of a team like the Timberwolves, who have these two nice scorers in their backcourt, and you think of a team like the Clippers, who just got Paul George back, and Shawn, he shot off in his first game back. So they're going to have to guard guys like that in order to, get those championship aspirations. So defense is as big a part of this as anything.
And that's one of the things we'll discuss tomorrow leading up to the Grizzlies and the Suns. Now looking at where the Grizzlies are, obviously one of the benefits that the Grizzlies have is that being that number 2 seed, they are going to play a team that at least has to play one more game. They will be playing a team that has to play one more game than they do before the playoffs, and obviously getting home court advantage. What team that's realistically in that 6th, 7th, 8th area do we want to see the most, and which one do we want to see the least? We'll have that and much more on tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. DaMichael, do you have anything else left before we say sayonara, good night, go Grizzlies, Southwest Division champs?
Shawn, we hit it. I mean, they're the champs. There's a lot to look forward to. There's an exciting postseason ahead, but there's also encouraging finishing that needs to happen in order for everyone to be at ease going into this postseason run. Because they're all good teams. They're all good teams that the Grizzlies could play. So at this point, you're the number 2 seed. So you know what you have. They're afforded to do, Shawn. They're afforded to sit back. You can kick their legs up, not too comfortable now, but kick the legs up just a little bit. Look at how the standings fall. Look at the Timberwolves lost that game. Interesting. They won that game. The Clippers won that game. And you just sit back. You relax. You let things play out. And you strap the shoes on and you get ready for an exciting postseason run.
I'm still not giving credit for the revival of us this season to your arrival, DaMichael. Other people have. I no offense. I'm a huge supporter, adore Zach Kleiman. I don't care what he says. I'm not giving you credit for this success. I'm sorry.
Shawn, well, that's humbling for me to hear at this point. It got to the point, Shawn, when they potentially accept their championship, I'm going to make sure that Kleiman, allows me to touch the Larry O'Brien trophy for all the good luck I brought to this team.
So you heard it here first. If the Memphis Grizzlies win the Larry O'Brien trophy, expect within 48 hours a selfie of DaMichael Cole to be on the gold ball. We also are glad to report that me and DaMichael have actually met each other in person. And the first quote, verbatim, that came from DaMichael Cole, I am the much more imposing figure on the basketball court. That will do it, Buster, here on the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. His name is DaMichael Cole's around here somewhere. His name is DaMichael Cole. You can find him at DaMichael C. My name is Shawn Coleman. You can find me at StatsSAC. DaMichael, another fun show with you, sir. I look forward to seeing you later on this week.
I'm looking forward to it, Shawn, as always.
Yep. For DaMichael Cole, my name's Shawn Coleman. The Grizzlies are Southwest Division champs, number 2 in the Western Conference, but the job's not done. The job is not done. So much more to come, and there's no better place for you to get all the coverage of it right here on Locked On Grizzlies. Have a great night.